There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today.
Maui Nui is on a mission to help balance axis deer populations for the good of our environment, communities, and food systems on the island of Maui. They've shared over 126,000 pounds of nutrient-dense protein with the Maui community. Secure your spot now. Become a snack subscriber and join in helping to build more resilient food and ecosystems on Maui. Visit MauiNuiVenison.com. That's MAUINUI venison.com and use promo code BEAR for 20% off your first order.
I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase.
My name is Clay Newcomb, and this is a production of the Bear Grease podcast called The Bear Grease Render, where we render down, dive deeper, and look behind the scenes of the actual Bear Grease podcast. Presented by FHF Gear, American-made, purpose-built hunting and fishing gear that's designed to be as rugged as the places we explore. Welcome to the Bear Grease podcast, everyone.
Take one.
We have a great group of people here today. The Bear Grease Render podcast is what this is, where we talk about and discuss the past documentary style Bear Grease podcast. I was asked recently why I would need to tell people that, and I told the people that people come in by the droves.
Yes, they do, by the droves.
They come in by the droves, and so we have to continue to tell people what they're listening to. And even more complicated now in the Bear Grease feed, we have Brent Reaves, This Country Life podcast.
All right.
Living large, man. That's so much fun.
Yeah, man.
Get some good feedback too. It's really cool.
Yeah. So you've done three episodes. So what were the episodes about?
Well, the first one was just an introduction to me and just kind of like who I am. The people would have been a little more in depth than what they would have got just listening to me ramble on here. Mm-hmm. And the second one, I think it was about man, you got to tell me. I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. The second one was also a little bit more about me, about the stuff that I tote in my pockets, mm-hmm. and why I do that. And the last one, the most recent one that's out right now, is about turkey hunting mentors. The mentors that influenced me that growing up, and some lessons I learned from those folks, and been really good. Been a lot of fun. Good.
So a lot of you probably would have heard This Country Life with Brent Reaves, but it's usually about 20 minutes long. It's a monologue. It's a little bit of comedy, a little bit of instruction, a lot of fun. It's lighthearted.
A tear every now and then.
A tear will stream down your cheek every now and then. Yeah. And the way that I have described it, and maybe I've described it on this podcast before, if anybody had fault with the Bear Grease podcast, they could say that it's like a heavy listen, like you have to work at it. I remember when we first did Bear Grease.
It's exhausting.
Like, one of the one of the guys, my dear friends at Meteor was like, I mean, it's like a pretty heavy listen. Like you actually have to it's not just easy listening music, quote unquote.
No Kenny G here.
Yeah, and I would say This Country Life is easy listening. Not that it's light.
Is he the Kenny G?
You ain't gonna hear No,
It's like the Kenny G of Bear Grease.
You'll hear some Waylon J on there, maybe, but no Kenny G.
I think if Steve Ranella is the Julia Childs of
The campfire.
the campfire,
per CBS.
Brent Reaves is the Garrison Keller
Oh, that's good.
of the Wilderness Podcast.
Prairie
Okay,
Home
tell us who
Companion.
Garrison
Yeah.
Keller is.
Okay,
Garrison
Prairie Home-
Keeler.
Keeler.
Oh, did I say it
Keeler.
wrong?
Garrison
Oh.
Keeler.
There's a
Oh.
pronunciation problem.
Well, there's
there.
someone
Runs in the family.
Runs in the
He
family.
did a
Spoiler alert.
he did a radio show. He did a radio show called the
Called
Prairie
a
Home
Prairie Home
Companion.
Companion.
Yeah.
Where all the Lake Wobegon.
Yep.
Yeah.
Where
And so that's
Where all the
Brent
women are
Reaves.
strong, all the men are good looking, and all the children,
Children
are
are
above
above
average.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. Well, this country life has been really great. So,
yeah.
Brent,
Thanks, buddy.
good job, man.
Mhm.
What did you tell the guy that asked you what the next week's podcast was going to be about?
I told him it was a two-parter. The first part was Nunyo, and the second part was Biz. He was trying to get some inside information.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to prison for that.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So we don't know what the next episode is. I know what it's about. It's
You
going to
do?
be good. Yeah. So the guests we have today, we have Ben Lagrone, who has been here several times,
Welcome back.
longtime friend of mine,
welcome back.
former history teacher.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, current childbirth influencer. yeah.
Formerly,
I mean, we're laughing.
Influencer.
That would be like if I said I'm a podcaster and all y'all went. "Ah!"
yeah.
But no,
Sorry, Ben.
Sometimes
So-
I just tell people I work for the internet.
yeah.
That's a good
Balanced
idea.
families. Yeah, great. And to your left is my wife, Dr. Misty Newcomb.
There it is.
There you go. All right.
Misty.
And I think we
Newcomb.
need to clarify.
Dun, dun, dun.
And not that I care, and not that you ever need to call me Dr. Misty Newcomb again, but there's a lot of people on the internet right now that think that Clay
Good job,
got
Clay.
the PhD.
Way to go.
Yeah, so-
you made it look
She
so
copied
easy.
off of you, didn't she?
So Misty made a post the other day, and what threw it off was the picture. We were at her
Right.
defense of
Yeah.
her dissertation, and we were there with our whole family, and I took like a selfie.
Big prominent.
I was
Okay.
I was the one holding the camera out, and so I'm up close and the family's back a little bit, and that was the only picture we had.
Mm.
And so Misty posted that and said, "I got my PhD. I finished it." And the internet lit up, and my
Trending.
phone lit up with people like, "Man, that's so great, Clay. We had no idea that you were even working
Here's
on
a
it."
prime example of how people look at that. When I can't remember what grade it was in, but probably all of them. But at least once a year, a teacher would give you a test that said, "Okay, follow these directions.
Mhm.
Start at the beginning, read them all the way through. You probably did this, Ben, and then do what the directions say." Well, like 15, 20 minutes in, I'm working. I read about half the directions, and I'm working my behind off. And I try to look, and 3/4 of everybody's sitting there staring at the ceiling or looking out the
I
window.
hated it when they did this.
Or getting up and walking out of the room. I'm like, golly, I got to hurry up. And if I just read the last line was like, do the first 3 problems, then you can go home. But I didn't
Story
do
of your
that.
life.
Yeah. So
I always felt
redefine print.
like it was a punishment for people who were, motivated and driven. Like I always felt like the teacher was trying to trick us, like to say read all the directions first, and then it was a mistake to do all the work.
That's the reason I can't go to the IKEA store. I am not reading those directions, buddy.
Mm.
You can get lost.
Mhm. Well, we'll come back to this. I just need to get through introductions here. I want to talk to you about your PhD and what it's in.
Oh, okay.
But to your left, we have coming back from it's been a while since he's been here.
OG.
Dr. Malachi Nichols.
That's right.
Yeah.
Who
Man,
was one of the
what's up?
original
Room.
Bear Grease
We're
That's
outnumbered,
right.
Joe.
render
OG.
people.
OG.
Yeah,
It's good to be
see you,
here.
Malachi.
Doctors
Wow.
everywhere.
Doctors.
Yeah.
You have
We're
to
handing them
schedule
out.
Malachi, like his people only let him come here like twice a year.
He's
and you have to
super
get on the
important.
schedule and to get him here. But it's
Yeah.
good to have you, Malachi.
Let's talk about August when we end.
Yeah. Yeah.
2025.
August 2025. And I'm still interested in a boat partner.
Hey, my boys are getting older that I would consider it more than a
Really?
minute.
Oh.
So
Okay.
you're telling
Back
me
on the
there's a chance.
table.
All right.
My son is like in love with the outdoors.
Mm,
And
that's
so
good.
let's talk in November 2026.
November 2026. Okay.
Pencil that in.
Okay. All right. That's cool. That's cool. And Josh Landbridge, Spielmaker, who is now a boat owner and a captain.
That's right. Captain Landbridge of the
That's
SS
great.
Landbridge.
What kind of boat did you get?
Landbridge.
It is a trout fishing boat specially designed for our White River tailwaters. 21 foot long, 48-inch bottom, 72-inch wide beam with a jet motor on the back. It's
Nice.
beautiful. Pretty slick.
What brand of boat is it?
It is an AAF.
AAF.
So AAF was a brand of boats that was made in Mountain Home
Awesome.
back in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Did your cool trout boat come with that flat bill hat?
Nope.
Yeah, you just got that.
Hat
on your
sold
own?
separately.
Josh always has the coolest hat.
He
does.
does.
I'm
It's
super
true.
jealous.
It's
And he
true.
looks
It
good. in 'em.
does.
Yeah.
I got to do something. I wear a beard because what's under the beard is not that great looking, and I wear a hat just to cover as much as possible.
There you go. Well, hey,
Very nicely
Brett,
color
I asked
coordinated.
Josh about taking his boat down to the big rivers of the South
Oh, yeah.
for us to go catfishing.
Sure. And he said,
He said he would do
Of course.
really?
Heck yes.
Oh, we're in, man.
Yeah.
Hey, someone else got a boat, and that's Bear John.
it. Yeah, our son got a boat.
We sometimes talk about how Bear uses my Facebook account to purchase and sell items, and all my friends think that because he doesn't have Facebook.
Misty's really into frog gigging right
yeah,
now.
really, and he's constantly like selling machine parts, and it's kind of funny because the boat I don't think has gone out into the water yet, but it's been the focal point of a lot of activity at the Newcomb farm, including with your son Josh.
Yeah.
Almost every other night, there's a group of like 5 or 6 boys here, or young men,
Yeah.
who are working on something on that boat. And we really thought it was going out on the water this weekend. And we came home, and they were supposed to have taken it out, and the boat's just hanging out there.
Bear
and they
told
went-
me today that the battery was dead.
Yeah, there's always a reason. And I think that they enjoy working on. I mean, it was a boat that came without a motor. Then they had to fix the motor that he got on Facebook Marketplace. Now they've got to charge the motor. I don't know. It's kind of.
It's a trolling motor. It's just got a trolling motor on
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's big. A lot of boat activity, Malachi. You better get in while the
Yeah,
getting's
yeah.
good, buddy.
Okay.
By 26, you'll be. It'd
Maybe
be
I'll
like
sell you my
if you'd have
boat.
bought Apple stock back in like 98,
Yeah.
it's like where you could be.
I wouldn't be on the podcast.
It's like that, buddy. You better watch out because hey, I want to go ahead and make this public declaration. Brent Reaves and I plan to become commercial fishermen.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, it's coming.
Yeah,
That's happening, huh?
or at least expert cat fishermen.
Mm-hmm.
I am an expert cat fisherman. I'm
Okay.
not saying that I'm not,
Okay.
but I've kind of been delayed in my development for the last 20 years because I've been pursuing other activities.
You mean like there's a professional cat fisherman trapped inside your body
Yes.
that hadn't been let out yet?
Well, he was out when I was in high school, but he got put back in when I moved to the mountains, kind of out of the big. Just when I moved up here, I don't. There's catfishing up here is not as good, but big plans for me and Brent to become professional cat fishermen. And on our maiden voyage a couple weeks ago, we caught a giant.
Gigantor.
Yeah,
He was huge.
yeah,
That's a 20-pound fish.
probably was
Wow.
You said
You
200?
said
20
20.
pound.
Oh.
20 pound.
20. Could maybe. Well, not tell you.
You're
Malachi,
probably
now
not
that
very
you
good
think
at
about it,
judging.
and you are a doctor. Could have been closer to 2.
Hey, you should
Somewhere between
when
20
you
and
have a
200.
fishing buddy. I think there's a lot of character in what the world has just witnessed that I underestimated the weight of that fish.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to be honest.
Yeah, you always say I overestimate bears by 30%.
Well, that's the truth.
But that's bears. We're talking catfish.
Catfish. So anyway, we're big into the boat world and are going to continue to get bigger. What were the other things on your list?
Well, I get a lot of questions on my Instagram about Banjo and whether or not we ever sold them.
Okay, right.
And I just
The mule.
Yeah, I felt like it'd be good to update everyone. Much like I predicted, Clay did not sell him despite his strong commitments to do so. Instead, Banjo went to boarding school.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
He's in the Ivy League.
I see.
He's in the Ivy
So
League
first of
school.
all,
Cotillion.
to give people a little bit of history, Izzy, the best mule I've got. I trained her. She's 7 years old. I got her when she was 18 months old. I trained her in the six week period, and I trained her myself. And she's a finished, really nice mule, worth a lot. I had a guy come to my house a few days ago and asked me what I would sell her for. And he was a mule trader.
And you said no amount of money. He
Well,
said
I told him, I said,
like,
you don't
sold.
I said, you don't have enough money to buy that mule. And I was being serious. So I'm telling you that because this is in connection. So Banjo is Izzy's full brother. And I got him with the intent of training him myself. My life was quite a bit different when I got Banjo in terms of the amount of time that I could spend with a mule. And so I kind of slow trained him. Okay. What I did with Izzy in 6 weeks, I did in like a year with him, which is not good. It's not good practice. There was just, rather than riding him 5 days a week, I rode him once every 10 days, or maybe once every 10 days, I'd ride him 3 days in a row. And I might go for a month without messing with him and then coming back and messed with him. And so last summer, I started riding him and got bucked off twice. Okay. So he scared me. And it was my fault. 100% my fault. And I really felt like this mule had a lot of potential. He was really level-headed. He was a flashy mule. And I'm going to tell you why it's for sure a bona fide, like, stamped and approved flashy mule. A man that I'm going to tell you about in a minute told me this, Brent. And so I asked my dad, asked all y'all, I think I'm just going to sell him because I pretty much a bucking mule can be like a biting dog. Like if your dog bites you, you don't really ask many questions. You get rid of the dog. A mule can be that way with certain people. I asked an old mule man, Lloyd Holly over here in Prairie Grove. And I said, man, I got a mule. He's bucked me off twice. I think it's my fault. I think he's a good mule. And he said, get rid of that sucker. But I just couldn't quite do it. And so my friend Michael Lanier, he was my squirrel hunting mentor and a good mule man. He introduced me to a guy in another part of Arkansas that is an Amish guy, mule trainer. And in the mule world, the Amish are legendary. The Amish are legendary for being mule trainers. And so for a very good price, I took Banjo over to this guy's place. And the idea was he would keep him for 30 days for a certain price. And he would ride him 30 times or, train him for 30 days.
Every day.
Every day. And so me and my uncle go over there and it was fascinating to me. We pull up to this place and I thought maybe the guy might have like 2 or 3 animals he was riding for people. This is like a businessman. He had probably 20 to 25 horses and mules in stalls, just one after the other. And he and his son and his son-in-law and I think another son, I think there were 4 of them that, rode and trained those mules and horses every day. Wow. It's just what they wake up and do. And while we're there, these people are very nice people. Then like this, not big conversationalists necessarily, but I'm trying to sap everything I can out of this small interaction when I'm dropping Banjo off at training camp, And while I'm sitting there, I tie Banjo up and there's all these mules and horses and Banjo's kind of excited and he's never been in an environment like this. He's kind of pulling at the lead rope and amped up. And I see 2 things that happen just while we're standing there in like 10 minutes that would be like, if that had happened to me, that'd have been a big deal. I watched him put I'm probably boring everybody. I watched him put a horse on a treadmill. One of the young guys brought this horse over that you could tell had never been ridden and was just bug-eyed, and they're trying to get it up on this horse treadmill. And they're pulling on it, and trying to get it up in there. And I'm talking to the dad, and he, while in conversation to me, just walks over, like never takes eye contact off of me, and gets right behind this horse and puts a lariat rope on one side of the treadmill, runs the lariat rope around the back of this horse that's freaking out. Like, and he's still talking to me, just like, well, yeah, we got all this stuff, da-da-da. Runs it around the back of the horse and through back of the horse back through the treadmill and pulls the rope so that the rope cinches down and pushes the horse onto the treadmill. And he takes the tail of that lariat rope and just pops that horse, and it just jumps on that treadmill just like, it was born to do it. You know,
Wow.
He had done that before.
It was a beautiful
least
trick.
once.
It was a beautiful trick. I mean, the
You trust
horse
this man
training
with
and
your banjo.
mule training is all about confidence. And I mean, that horse knew that this guy wasn't going to take anything. And then directly after that, we're still in the same conversation. One of the young boys walks up and he's got a young colt saddled up. And this colt, you can tell, it's just hardly ever had a saddle on him. And he puts a saddle on him and ties him up to a stall right there. And the horse starts pulling against the lead, pulling against it like he's not used to being tied up. And he starts bucking and kicking and flips over on the ground, feet in the air, just rolling on the ground. I mean, it's like chaos. And that boy never batted an eye and just sat there within about 2 feet of that horse. The man never breaks conversation. Like, I'm like, does he need our help? Get out of here. And he lets that horse do its thing. It flops for a minute, stands up. The boy never, I'm serious, he didn't smile. He didn't grin. His blood pressure didn't go up. And then he takes the horse off of the, unties it and walks it out. And he didn't ride the horse, but he just starts training. I mean, just like every day they see this. That's where Banjo's at.
Wow.
So
How long has he been there?
And when I was leaving, the man said to me, he said, Banjo will be on that treadmill by the time you guys leave.
I love it.
I didn't see him put him on, but he was just like, it starts today.
How long's he been there?
Well, he was there for a month, and I talked to him, and he said he's really happy with what Banjo's doing. He says he's not bucked, he's not kicked. He said he really wants to do what they want him to do.
Uh-huh.
He thinks he's got a lot of potential. He thinks that he told me he needs another 30 days. So I'm going to leave him there another
It's like
30
a
days.
chiropractor.
Yeah. I went through the whole thing with him about, well, what if I took him? And he said, well, how much time will you have to ride him? And I said, well, I don't know, probably not that much. And he said, well, you need to leave him here. And I said, deal. And then I said, Misty, what will this animal be worth when he comes back from you after being under saddle for 60 days? And he said, Clay, that's a pretty flashy mule. He's got white feet.
Whoa.
And he said
Speaking
he's
to
a
your
big
heart
mule.
right there.
Yeah, he literally
Speaking to
said
your
that.
heart right
He
there.
literally said that. And he told me that they took a mule like Banjo to a big sale the other day and sold him for $5,500. And he said if I rode him for a year after I get him back from them, he said he might be worth $10,000.
There you go.
$10,000?
How you like that?
I should have sent that bucking horse of mine up there. My dad got.
It's kind of like Banjo
King's
got a
Revenge.
PhD.
King's Reward.
Banjo got his own PhD.
Yeah.
Banjo's getting the PhD from
Yeah.
those boys.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a big story.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I'm glad to hear that Banjo's in such, I think I envisioned it as a little bit, I envisioned it a little differently.
Like
just to be
Scare
honest.
Straight, maybe.
Well, I mean, I feel like that's what we're in.
That's what was
I
going
didn't-
on out here.
Yeah. It feels a little, it's like, I didn't realize Banjo was in this much trouble, that he goes to a place like that. But it helps
He's-
me.
Yeah,
It helps me
I'm
think.
thinking about sending some of the kids though.
Yeah, I've got a couple names I could add to the list of suggestions.
I love those guys.
My
so
question
much.
is, did the treadmill have one of those screens with a trainer's face on it and talking to it?
You know what they
Like
do? You know what they do?
Got Mr. Ed reruns.
The horse is running on the treadmill, and it's got big sides on it, and they throw tarps over the mule. They get up on the treadmill and sit on the mule while it's running on the treadmill, like on a mule that's never been ridden, just because it can't get away.
You can't fight it.
It can't fight. It's got nothing. And
Is
so,
it an electric treadmill?
Wow.
It's like, what do they call that?
I mean, it's the mule's
immersion
running.
therapy? What?
And by the time they're done, I mean, the mule doesn't care. He's just like, well, I guess people can get on my back now. So we had a interesting 2 episodes of the Bear Grease podcast that just came out about, we call it our Conman series.
It's good.
This all started, Steve Ranella was actually the one who told me about the book, The Education of Little Tree.
Did you ever heard of it before?
No. Had you?
Had anyone?
Jessica read it in junior high because she's.
Wow.
Yeah, that's Jessica.
Junior high.
Really? Your wife, Jessica?
Oh, like independently. It wasn't like
No,
an
it was
assignment.
in class. It was either junior high or high school. She read it.
Because
in
she's a
class.
literature major, but she did it in high school, huh?
Yeah, but then she didn't know the backstory because she's like, yeah, I didn't really care for that book. But when I told her about the author, she's like, that is really fascinating.
Yeah.
So she read it. Had you ever heard of it, Malachi?
Never.
Yeah. Yeah, I had never heard of it. And I think that it was on its way to becoming a book like Where the Red Fern Grows, kind of an American classic adolescent book. And then all this stuff with Asa came out, and it put a damper on that. Sure. It wasn't until 2007 that Oprah Winfrey took the book off her book list.
Really?
Yeah. It was on her book list for years and years.
Wow.
Originally, when it first came out and was people liked it, even after the New York Times article came out.
She kept it on there.
There was a period of time when people just didn't know.
Okay.
It just the internet was hardly there.
Social
in the
media,
mid-90s, there just wasn't. It took a while for the world to kind of catch up to the book. And that's when Oprah Winfrey took it off. I tried to get Oprah here today.
She didn't respond to the Bear Grease invite?
Well, no, she didn't.
Well, sometimes these invites come out last minute. So maybe next time with a little more planning.
Most of them.
He opened it up with a hoot owl call. That's probably what got the phone hung up.
Ready to win Mother's Day and cement your reputation as the best gift giver in the family? Give the moms in your life an Aura digital picture frame preloaded with decades of family photos. She'll love looking back on these memories and seeing what you're up to today. Even better, with unlimited storage and an easy-to-use app, you can keep updating mom's frame with new photos, so it's the gift that keeps on giving. And this is not a joke. Juju Newcomb has an Aura frame, and we share photos, and they're incredible. Also, my mother-in-law has one. We have them. They truly are really good, really high quality. The Aura frame is easy to set up. It takes just 2 minutes to set up a frame using the Aura app. It also adjusts the display depending on light levels in the room to maintain the true color of your photos. For real, the digital screen is amazing. Right now, Aura has a great deal for Mother's Day. Listeners can save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $30 off plus free shipping on their best-selling frame when you use code BEAR, B-E-A-R, BEAR. That's auraframes.com. Use code BEAR at checkout to save. Terms and conditions apply. I've had a Helix Sleep mattress for over 2 years, and it is for sure the nicest mattress that I've ever slept on. I've slept much better in the last 2 years, been more comfortable than I have for my whole life, and that's true. The Helix lineup offers 20 unique mattresses, including the award-winning Luxe Collection, the newly released Helix Elite Collection, a mattress designed for big and tall sleepers, and even a mattress made just for kids. Take the Helix Sleep Quiz and find your perfect mattress in under 2 minutes, and your personalized mattress is shipped straight to your door free of charge. Helix has several different mattress models to choose from, each designed for specific sleep positions and feel preferences. Helix is offering 20% off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners. Go to helixsleep.com/clay and use the code HelixPartner20. This is their best offer yet and won't last long. With Helix, better sleep starts now. The old-timers say that the turkeys start gobbling when the leaves are as big as squirrels' ears and the red buds start popping. And we're about there. And we are there in the South. The Onyx Hunt app is one of my most valuable tools in the spring woods. With tools like coniferous versus deciduous tree distribution layer, you can save time by locating edges or transition areas of mixing habitats from home. Find an area like this with water in close proximity, and more than likely, there will be a gobbling turkey nearby. Knowing the exact boundaries of private ground ensures I stay on the right side of the fence, but can easily find public ground to go see if I can't strike a gobbler. If you do get one to sound off, using compass mode and waypoints will help you pinpoint his exact location, allowing you to move in and make the perfect setup to bring him right into your lap. Download the Onyx Hunt app today. You'll be glad you did. Onyx has a special offer for you. Use code BEARGREASE to receive 20% off your membership at onyxmaps.com/hunt this spring.
Where to start with this one? So we have already talked about the first episode, but the second episode with Asa Carter. Who would like to start? Who would like to start?
Would it be too early to jump in with some of the just clarifying?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. I don't want to be mean to Clay, but But I actually after
Scary.
I got my head on a swivel. What's
Yeah,
that?
exactly.
did any of you find the pronunciation of the KKK? I think that's where we need to start. How would you say, Brent? Don't say KKK. Say the full.
Say what each one of them
Yeah.
stands for. Ku Klux Klan.
Right? Anyone else say it differently?
I do.
I always grew up.
What do you say?
saying
The
Ku
Clue.
Klux
You do it
Klan.
too,
Yeah,
Dr.
yeah.
Malachi Nichols.
Klux
What?
Klan.
Ku Klux
It
Klan.
is.
It's Ku Klux Klan.
Most definitely Ku Klux Klan.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
a. And once you listen to the podcast, Clay said after we recorded the podcast, he said, "Hey, say." He basically did the same thing I just did to you, and he said, "Say what that. How would you say KKK?" And I said, "Ku Klux Klan." And he goes, "Oh, doggone it." Josh, you say it Clue?
I don't say it that way, but I grew up in my mind hearing it that way, and I think I was a teenager before I realized. I think I saw it in print. I was like, "Oh, it's actually Ku Klux Klan, not Ku Klux
Ku
Klan."
Klux Klan sounds like something from a Dr. Seuss book.
But it makes sense on your tongue. It's almost like they made a mistake. Like
Yeah,
they might
yeah,
like
yeah.
later be like, "Oh, I forgot that L." Messed up
One of many.
the symmetry.
Yeah, so now that we've got that out of the way.
Now that we've got that out of the way, I thought this was fascinating. Like on so many levels, I thought this podcast was fascinating. I think one of the most fascinating parts of it is that the book is blacklisted, and I haven't heard of it, and none of my students have read it. That to me, when I just listening to the podcast, I hadn't heard of the book, so I like to put this kind of stuff and hearing like when I heard the different excerpts from the book and what they described, it would be the type of book that we would love to read at the school, but it's never on any of the list. Like when you look at
When you Google blacklisted books.
no, well, I mean, I don't Google blacklisted books. That's not what I'm going for. But it's just interesting. It's never on a recommended list, and none of our literature teachers have ever brought this up as a good book to read, a good conversation to have. I think it's fascinating that Jessica read it, and they didn't have a broader conversation about the fact that this
heard
man was
quite
a total
few-
fraud.
Quite a few people reached out to me and said they had read the book and didn't know the background.
And didn't know that.
Yeah.
And to me, that's wild. That would be a fascinating background to discuss with high school kids, especially. I mean, I would think, or college students.
Young
But that
adults.
brings up the biggest question in the whole thing: is does it matter? Does it matter, Malachi? Does it matter that he wrote a great book and that he was this guy?
I mean, yes and no. Like, I was rooting for him in a sense of like to hope that he changed at the end,
Mhm.
you know, because I think just looking at people when like it's hard to change when you get older, right? And to potentially see a guy who was so distraught with the world and so, racist that potentially he would change, and you would
So
see.
you were thinking maybe
I was thinking
the
maybe
end
this
was
guy
gonna be,
was, he changed, and so
Like a redemptive story.
Yeah, and he
Mhm.
like produced this great work that was always in him, right? So from that perspective, I think I was rooting for him. I mean, I think it doesn't take away the fact that it's a great book, but I do think you have to. I do think it requires a read and then a discussion, right, about the author, because I can't remember if it was in the first or second episode the first or second episode you kind of asked like, would you read this to your kids?
yeah.
Right. And I think to me, I think I would when they're older to have that conversation about like, can people who do bad stuff produce good things? Right.
Yeah.
That's a deep question, especially regarding race, that you yourself have to be resolved in to have. And I think it's a great conversation to have with kids who will be faced with, people whose values or the way they live their life is different than you, that they might produce something that's good. And do you value that, or do you shun it away just because of their history? I don't have the right answer right now, but I mean, I think it's a great exercise to have, and it puts you in an uncomfortable position, right? I think at the end, the guy
either
was
way.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, the hard part, or not the hard part, but the question then becomes, to what level of scrutiny do we scrutinize everything? Because it's like I can pick up this book right here. Well, pick up a book and name the author.
Yeah.
Is that author perfect? You know,
Can be.
Yeah.
did the author
if you're
make
picking up the
mistakes?
Bible, then yes.
That's about the only one.
I mean, so
Yeah.
then that means there's a gradient scale because Asa's life was so radical and the sentiment so egregious that we can say, well, for sure it matters with this guy because of how egregious it was. But then the guy that, you know, cheated on his wife,
Yeah.
you know, maybe it's not that big a deal. Or I mean, I guess it's all, and that's just an example of some
I
scandal.
Guess I think what makes this a little bit different is that he stated it was semi-autobiographical.
That
He
could
lied.
Just another lie.
Yeah, he just, I mean, but it is an important one when you, I think it wouldn't matter to me if he just said this was a nonfiction book or this is a fiction
Right.
book. Like if he just said this is just a novel that kind of I made up, then that wouldn't be very important. But the fact that he said this was like his
Sure.
life story, that makes it, that is puzzling and makes you have to kind of jump to, okay, this guy was crazy.
Yeah.
And maybe that doesn't matter. Maybe that doesn't make the book less good, but poor guy, he was really crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the value of it starts at page 1 and ends at the last page in that book, and you don't take it any further than that.
So you're a big death of the author guy.
If the end of that is the end of his, I'm trying to think how to phrase it. His participation in that to me stopped when at the last period in the last page of that book, and if I owe that guy, if I read that book and enjoy it, thank you for writing the book. Nothing else matters to me as far as he's concerned, as long as he's not affecting me or my friends or my family or something like that. Which brings up another question. Does that, you know, if that book is successful like it was, does that adversely affect me or my family or my friends? I don't. It'd be hard to correlate all that together. But as far as him as a human being, would I sit down and have a cup of coffee with him? No. Could I read his book and enjoy it and end it with just that participation in that piece of his life that he wrote out on a piece of paper? Yeah, I can enjoy that. But the rest of it is immaterial to me, the way I look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't want to be real chatty Cathy here. At the same time, though, does it, you know, his life's message was a massive injustice to a lot of people.
Well, Asa Carter's was, for sure.
Yeah.
Forrest Carter was,
We're just kind of acknowledging this guy was like two different people. And
I think he was schizo.
yeah, I that's what, at the end, I thought that of the theories, that was probably the best. This guy is crazy.
Yeah.
He's not well.
Because it
And-
What do
wasn't
you
just
think, Ben?
it wasn't. Oh,
No, go
Ben.
ahead.
I was just gonna say it wasn't just a pen name, right?
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's
yeah,
what
yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a pen name. Like he picked up and moved his life
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
talked to Barbara Walters.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the last straw.
I mean, that's like some magician type of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like to live that type of life,
Yeah.
you gotta be drinking something in your tea.
You know what? I tried to get the audio from his interview with Barbara Walters, and
I couldn't find it.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't hear you say this on the recording, but didn't she say that was the interview?
So Dan T. Carter, he told me that back in the 70s, the Today Show was it was one of the best shows, the most watched shows in America, but they were still using tape and literally would tape over the stuff they did
Oh, wow.
like the week before, just
Right.
like
Wow.
saving tape, saving money. And so there's no archival footage of that interview, but they said that that he wore his cowboy hat and he like had his head down all the time, and he was kind of like, when you look back at it now, an expert would be like, yeah, that guy's probably lying, but at the time, it just wasn't seen.
Didn't she say she regretted that?
I want to say that she said that was one of the bigger regrets of her professional career, because perhaps she wasn't ever duped like that before.
Right.
Everybody she sat down with, they may have lied to her, but at least they were who they said they were.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, the guy that's what was interesting to me, for no good reason, but the guy was just super smart and was an actor and could tie stories together. I mean, he was kind of, and I don't want to use the word brilliant because it sounds like you're like you like the guy,
him, yeah.
but he was
Cunning and crafty.
yeah. Golly, was he ever? Ben, what were you gonna say?
Well, a couple of thoughts. The first, almost like a technicality, and this was kind of hinted at in the podcast, that him having some apparently subconscious things that he respected about Cherokee culture, stuff like that, that's not as like contradictory to his like worldview as people might think. Because he didn't write a book about a slave narrative and pretend that he was African American. Like,
Right.
don't think he could consciously do that. But so as is a technicality, it's like sometimes people view like racists as just like this black or white thing.
Right. If you're not, yeah.
And actually, I think that's actually one of the fact that people are more complex than that, to me, is actually the danger in how you might, how you interact with people that do have some pretty messed up worldview. For instance, like people that I look at in my childhood that I kind of respected and knew, and I look back, like it's not like I just reject wholesale everything about their character, but I look back and I see how messed up their views were on race, and I learned from that. And my point is, like, people are complex, and I think you can in one hand like condemn something, and on the other hand be like, wow, that's interesting. But I think after studying history for so many years, I still baffled why we as in like society want to like venerate people or just like condemn every part of them, or
Right.
why do people get so infatuated with talented writers and musicians? Like, who said anybody has to like this guy just because he's a good writer? Because obviously he's a good writer.
Yeah.
Same thing with musicians. Like, I'll start watching a documentary about some musician that I like their music, and I'm halfway into it, I'm like, I kind of can't stand this person. Like, like I would not hang out with them. Like, I like their music, but I don't like anything about them as a person. But it's just weird in us how we try to put people on a pedestal just because they're talented.
Right.
And you see that in history, starting with George Washington, who was as human as all of us. He's got like this godlike status in our culture because people don't really know about his entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And when you study history, there's so much to take in. You kind of are taught to categorize things pretty quickly, so you can just understand it quicker. And it's like, these are the social causes, these are the political causes, these are the economic causes, and these were the good guys, these were the bad guys, and that's just who they were. But when you really dive into history, read biographies and stuff, you learn how complex people are. And sometimes you find people are actually pretty crazy at the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that might have been part of the driver of their just like massive output of productivity or whatever they were in, whether it's politics or art or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But people are complex.
That's good. I think what you said about musicians, like and Malachi, I'm not arguing with you. I'm the same way. I think I agree with what you said at the beginning. Like it does matter what the author believed and did with his life. It's important. It's not irrelevant. But at the same time, how many musicians do I like their music but would really be deeply opposed to the values and lifestyle that they live? Like a lot. But I still would listen to their music and enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I think about, you could apply it to like politics. There's a lot of politicians whose lifestyles do not match their voting patterns. And so a lot of people would vote for them because they like the way they vote. But then they find out how they live, and it's like, ooh, yuck.
That's different.
That's actually the opposite of what you say.
Yeah.
And which one matters? How they vote, and how much that aligns to how you would want to be represented in your government, in a representative government,
Or their
how
personal character.
Exactly.
Yeah.
These are complex, difficult questions.
Landbridge.
It's interesting. I actually had some of the same thoughts about musicians and celebrities. I mean, I struggle sometimes like with professional athletes. It's like that are venerated, but really they're just absolute dirtballs,
Mm-hmm.
and because they have a skill. And at the same time, you can enjoy watching them play, or you can enjoy listening to their music.
No,
And
when there's a sports game on, I only watch the good guys. I do not enjoy.
Where's
You don't
Pistol
watch
Parents?
anyone that doesn't have my exact value system, I blank them out in my mind as they play football.
but I think I would lean more toward the death of the author philosophy. That I think that you know, I think you can. I think it also depends on your worldview and perspective, because I think there are people who are very critical of everything that they see and hear. And I remember when I was a kid, we boycotted everything because and until I got older and realized like there is stuff in the world that is not going to align with my values. However, Scripture talks about being in the world and not of the world, and so we have the opportunity to maneuver those things and still maintain the standards that we have. I can read this book and not violate my conscience, or I can and enjoy it. However, do I agree with Asa Carter? Absolutely not. You know what I mean? The man was a kook. But I think if your perspective is right, you can read that book and you can identify things inside of it that are beautiful, because I think the prose that you read in the I've never read the book, but that you read the excerpts of on the podcast, it was so beautifully written and it paints a picture in your mind. But at the same time, we can also, I think we have the ability to, if you have a critical mind and an ability to read that stuff, can someone who has such a strong philosophy about certain things write like that and not be subversive or seditious things going on behind there, even consciously or subconsciously, that they put in there? Who knows? But I do appreciate it, and I think you can read it. You know what I mean? I think probably thousands of when Oprah put it on her list, I'm sure thousands and thousands of people read it and liked it, and didn't become racist.
This guy must be a swell guy writing this book.
I think I'm one of those people that, like, when you're watching a movie, and if it really impacts me, I go and research like the people who wrote it and who made it, and so first of all, I think I would not have been duped. Had I known this book existed, I think I would have researched this guy.
You'd have found him out.
I think I would have.
Well, in the early years, you couldn't have, though.
It's true.
It's
true. Yeah, it's true. But I think, for me, like, I do get really connected to who, and I don't abstain from watching them in sports, but I actually care a lot about that, the people behind all these things. And that matters a whole lot to me. Mainly just because I'm curious, and I'm interested in the person behind such a brilliant story. So I think for someone like me, this is like, what? This guy just totally lied and is completely different.
It would have affected you beyond, would it have affected you so much that you wouldn't have enjoyed the story?
Well, I don't know that if I wouldn't have enjoyed the story, but it certainly changes when you read it.
Sure.
I thought it was really interesting when he actually interviewed the Native American people, and they said, well, this is accurate, but this part over here is not at all. Yeah, we would have never. And it was like, oh, okay, so he's kind of just writing like a Southern guy who has observed some.
Right.
I kind of thought that was a little nitpicky, though.
Really?
Well, kind of like Steve said. He said nobody had problems with this book at all until we found out who the author was. Steve said, go back to the 70s and see if anybody was saying that it was bad.
Did they have any Native Americans interviewed in the 70s about what they thought about it?
That I don't really know. But I know that the world, and this wasn't coming from the Native American community, perhaps they had a response, and I'm unaware of it. But, the world was venerating him as one of the greatest Native American writers in history.
Pretty crazy.
And so, I mean, they weren't, I don't know.
Yeah.
Have they ever heard of Tecumseh? Tecumseh?
Yeah. Tecumseh.
Tecumseh.
I had a guy stop me the other day and say, Clay, it's not Tecumseh, it's Tecumseh.
Oh, that sounds a lot better.
Sense.
Yeah.
Ready to win Mother's Day and cement your reputation as the best gift giver in the family? Give the moms in your life an Aura digital picture frame preloaded with decades of family photos. She'll love looking back on these memories and seeing what you're up to today. Even better, with unlimited storage
and an easy-to-use app. You can keep updating Mom's frame with new photos, so it's the gift that keeps on giving. And this is not a joke. Juju Newcomb has an Aura frame, and we share photos, and they're incredible. Also, my mother-in-law has one. We have them. They truly are really good, really high quality. The Aura frame is easy to set up. It takes just 2 minutes to set up a frame using the Aura app. It also adjusts the display depending on light levels in the room to maintain the true color of your photos. For real, the digital screen is amazing. Right now, Aura has a great deal for Mother's Day. Listeners can save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $30 off plus free shipping on their best-selling frame when you use code BEAR, B-E-A-R, BEAR. That's auraframes.com. Use code BEAR at checkout to save. Terms and conditions apply. The old-timers say that the turkeys start gobbling when the leaves are as big as squirrels' ears and the red buds start popping. And we're about there. And we are there in the South. The onX Hunt app is one of my most valuable tools in the spring woods. With tools like coniferous versus deciduous tree distribution layer, you can save time by locating edges or transition areas of mixing habitats from home. Find an area like this with water in close proximity, and more than likely, there will be a gobbling turkey nearby. Knowing the exact boundaries of private ground ensures I stay on the right side of the fence, but can easily find public ground to go see if I can't strike a gobbler. If you do get one to sound off, using compass mode and waypoints will help you pinpoint his exact location, allowing you to move in and make the perfect setup to bring him right into your lap. Download the onX Hunt app today. You'll be glad you did. onX has a special offer for you. Use code BEARGREASE to receive 20% off your membership at onxmaps.com/hunt this spring. Whitetail Institute launched the food plot revolution in 1988 with a concentration on research and real-world testing of forage products specifically for whitetail deer. Whitetail Institute's research and development team of agronomy experts provide effective, personalized service. I've been using Imperial whitetail clover for a long time in a food plot back behind my house. In 2007, I killed the biggest buck of my life over an Imperial whitetail clover small quarter-acre food plot. Imperial whitetail clover is the only clover scientifically developed through years of selective breeding. Clover Extreme genetic stability provides extreme cold tolerance, disease, and drought tolerance. It really does. Clover is coated with Whitetail Institute's Rain Bond, a polymer coating added for enhanced seedling survivability. They have an exclusive offer for Bear Grease listeners, 15% off Imperial Clover when you use the code BEAR at whitetailinstitute.com. That's whitetailinstitute.com and use code BEAR for 15% off. What do you guys? This is a technical media question.
Oh, okay.
What do you guys think about me reading excerpts from books? Like when
I like
you're
it.
listening to the
I like it a
podcast,
lot.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yep.
do you go, "Oh gosh, here
I
we
feel
go."
more connected to it.
Okay.
And I could say I've kind of I can say I haven't read the book, but I listened to an audio book because I did technically a little snippet.
Just on, with just me
Some
reading.
people say, "You ever read that?" I'm like, "Yeah, I listened to an audio book."
You know
No,
what?
sometimes I just, when I'm making these podcasts, I'm just trying to find a way to tell the story. And part of this was convincing people who hadn't read the book that it was a good book. I mean, that was what I was trying to do because I believed it was a good book.
What I found interesting was the whole thing about making money. It was almost like, he obviously never admitted that he thought he was wrong, but he eventually kind of gave up. It was almost like lost this war that I've devoted my life to. I'm just going to go make some money. Yeah. I didn't find that very shocking. That kind of makes sense. I think the most shocking thing is the extent he went to sell a book, to literally con America.
Yeah.
And it's pretty twisted, but also kind of hilarious. It made me think of when Elon Musk took over Twitter, and everybody thought he was going to fire everybody, and these two random young guys got boxes, and they started walking down the street near the office and fooled all these journalists into saying they got fired. They started tweeting and writing about all these firings, and they were just totally made it up. There's something that's entertaining about somebody that cons others like that.
You know what? I have to say, and maybe this is a character flaw, but I assume that that if I pick up a book and it says based on a true story or something like that, that is a lie.
That is an exaggeration
Yeah,
at best.
that if I see a movie that's based on a true story,
Yeah, they made that up.
They made that crap up.
Yeah.
You know.
Based on a
Oh
true
man,
story.
you should see. I mean, when I'm watching a movie based on a true story, I basically have my
Exactly.
phone
Oh,
right
Me
there.
that's
too.
me and
And
Alexis
I'm
right
like
there.
Or an-
fact checking everything.
I mean, who's to say that an autobiography is completely true?
Yeah.
I mean,
It's my story. I tell it like I want to.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's this country life.
Amen.
One day they'll be doing a podcast about Brent. We'll be like, none of it was true.
That guy was from New York City.
You know, something that's made me think
Get her
about is and there's been several stories like this that have come out in the news in the last like 5 or 10 years. But at our daughter's school, there was a woman who was like named to all these Latin like community service leadership positions and really worked for the welfare of Latino people. And she, of course, claimed to have been raised in a Latin community in like, you know, some urban area. And it turned out she is not at all Latin.
What?
Like
Oh,
there's
wow.
none of that. And she got found out. She got fired, and they wrote an apology letter to all the students and to me as a parent. I got this letter. We know you're disturbed by this, and it was like, this woman's been working for decades inside of this community and I don't even know how they figured it out, but it's kind of the same thing, except for in her case, she was actually
She's doing good.
for that community.
Wow.
And it's like,
That's wild.
that's pretty messed up though. I mean, living a total lie. And
Iron Eyes Cody.
what's that?
Remember that guy?
Yeah.
The Native American.
In the
Air quotes.
1970s.
They're standing on the side of the road, and somebody drives by and throws a McDonald's sack out in his feet, and he's dressed in full Native American regalia, and he turns and looks towards the camera and a big old tear.
That
Yeah.
guy was not an Indian?
That dude was from Sicily.
He was
Are
Italian.
you kidding me?
Yeah, he was Italian.
I didn't
Josh's
know
world
that.
is being rocked right now.
See, I told you.
Are you going to start littering now?
Heck yes.
Because you've been fooled? Hey,
Yeah.
what did you guys think about were you surprised? Malachi, let me ask you, were you surprised when you heard the inner workings of how the white supremacists were saying that the civil rights movement was the communists being fed by the Jews?
No.
Did you know that?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I studied that in school.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. I think it goes back to what Ben said. This stuff is complex. You know, the issues of race and South, it's really complex, and there's no black and white. I think human beings want it to be black and white, yes or no. And it's just not so. And I think also one thing that I was just thinking about Asa and just his life, I think everybody comes to a position of like making a choice, right? I think he probably had a choice of like wanting things deeper or like turning his life around or trying to produce books and just like letting the KKK life go. And I think he just made a choice to not do it. And I think towards the end of his life, he probably looked back. You got to mix in, he's crazy and stuff like that. Looked back and thought, man, like I wasted my time, right? I did this radio show and got kicked out, right? I supported, Governor Wallace and then ran against him and lost, right?
Mhm.
Like his life is just a bunch of trying and failing. And then he just thought, man, maybe I should put my life towards something. And he produced this like great book. So I don't know, very interesting man.
It was
You
cool
know-
that he told that story. Somebody that was in the Navy with him. He said they'd
Oh.
heard that
Yeah.
story when he was young,
Yeah.
before he did all that other
When
stuff.
he was 18 years old,
Yeah.
he told that story.
He told, so that's been in him for a while. And it goes back to that thing I said on the last render. I think people are inherently good because that's the only place a story like that comes from. And he just chose to be
Yep.
a terrible person.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think everybody, obviously, I say obviously, I'm not a doctor like most of the folks in here,
Yeah.
but
Or
three of us.
a captain.
or a captain.
There's three. That's right.
Captain
Malachi,
Landbridge.
Misty, and Clay.
Yeah, but
And Ben's a doula.
it would seem that the guy had some kind of mental problems.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that, he could have been a good guy because that story's got to come from a good place to me.
I've got a theory, on gifting and it's based on a lot of different things, but I feel like sometimes people who are like extremely good at stuff, and they talked about every single good speech or it was clear he was an excellent writer. He was excellent. And sometimes I feel like you're kind of teetering with like this balance in life between normal and gifting. And like the more gifted you are and the more you go into that space and the more you perfect your craft, the less stable you become as a human being. That's kind of a pessimistic worldview, but that's been my experience.
What you're saying, it made me think about, Asa Carter made me think about Bill Gates. And there's a documentary about Bill Gates, and his wife is talking about Bill and how Bill is extremely smart, but Bill is not connected to his emotions, right? Connected to how he feels. And I think it kind of connects with what Misty says, like you can put so much energy in perfecting your craft and doing these things with gifting that you lose a sense of humanity, right? You lose a sense of connection and normalcy and enjoyment and, valuing people, that you get warped. And I think you mix that with like, the deep racist, there was a story in there where he talked about he got removed or he failed out of a class and like that immediately he got resentful. So that, like, you mix all of that.
Like the system being against you, and you feel like, oh, this isn't fair. And it kind of twists you a little bit.
Yeah. And it's can't be my fault.
Yeah.
I got to blame somebody else.
Looking for an enemy.
I think working with kids a lot, you see parents come in when kids are really young, and they want you to perceive their kids as gifted and really unique. And it's like, I think you should really be shooting for average here. There's a lot of value in having an average kid. There's a lot of, I'm joking, but I'm also dead serious.
Well,
because
and it's something that we've done with our kids, I think, is that being gifted at something, it's almost like it doesn't come by merit in a way. And so there's things that we have honored character over gifting with our kids. That's the most simple way to say it, because gifting will take care of itself. Yep. There's certain things that your kids, you are going to be able to do that nobody else can do, that you didn't work for. You just kind of got it.
Yeah.
Like Brent and his beard and his overalls. And
that beard's looking good, by the way.
So you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, and if you put too much of an emphasis on that, and if you go
put emphasis on the gifting, it'll kind of pollute them.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot to be said for restraint. Just saying, hey, I can go to like real extreme places with this thing, and you see this a lot with artists and they get weird.
Artists, musicians.
Yep.
Yeah, they just
Racist.
it's like exactly. But you see this a lot with artists where they just go down these extreme tunnels. They take on different identities. They become different people, and it's like, I bet it'd be good for the world if you were just like pretty darn good at your art and a really good person.
Let me ask you guys something. Do you? I had a lot of people comment to me that they were maybe not surprised, but that's what they said, that we could tackle this kind of issue on this platform. What do y'all think? You are just kind of like, well, of course we're going to talk about this. What do you think, Malachi?
I mean, I wouldn't say surprised. I think it needs to be like, when I think about like the Bear Grease podcast, I think about like taking you to the wild and it's uncomfortable, right? And I think it's okay to
it's a
navigate
inside
like
of a
the
metaphor.
things that are uncomfortable. And I just think race in the South and, hunting and Indians and, everything that's included, it's uncomfortable. It's not as black and white.
Yeah.
And, you navigate it with wisdom, but I think you do got to talk about it.
Yeah. It's all just really interesting to me. I had one negative review.
It's a 1-star.
Yeah. He said, I love the podcast. I love all you guys, but this has nothing to do with hunting. This is an outdoor podcast. This is a waste of time. Like, he just lambasted us, like saying, like, why are you even talking about it? And I don't take much. I mean, this is not, we never said it was a hunting podcast.
Right.
I mean,
No.
honestly, if I'm interested in it and there's any connection to the natural world, and this book, The Education of Little Tree, was the gateway into
Yeah.
into this story.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I appreciate that we can talk about this stuff
Yeah.
and not be afraid of it. Saying that, let's close on this one. What'd you think about me reading the Unabomber
That's
Manifesto?
exactly what I was about to say. I was like,
I
I'm
mean,
not
talk
surprised we
about
talk about this, but that feels a little
subversive.
bit like.
No, Ranella is the one who had to read the Unabomber Manifesto in the same class that he read the Education of Little Tree. And so the Unabomber Manifesto was in the New York Times and the Washington Post in 1995. So it's not like this is contraband material. This literally was published
Oh yeah.
in these places. And it didn't take me long to find that section. And I wasn't looking for that section. I was just looking for a section that I could pull out that would have some relevance. And a whole lot of what he said, a whole lot of humans in America would agree with.
Well, that's how those kind of people get followers.
Exactly.
Is
Yeah.
looking for somebody or looking to identify with somebody. And if they're an orator like Tecumseh or however we decide to say it, that's how he got his folks following him. He was able to get his message out. Oh, I identify with that guy. I'm going to start following him. Let's go do some stuff together. Burn a barn. Well, okay. I guess it's all right. And then it just magnifies from there. But that's how they get those folks to follow them.
Yeah.
It's almost like extremism is about the application and the solution to the problem, but they start out talking about the problem that a lot of people might agree with, and then they just get more and more extreme.
Yeah.
Yeah, it goes back to that thing. Everybody always, regardless of what the issue is, somebody ought to do something about that. Well, finally, some guy says, well, I'll tell you what, I'll do something about it if you'll go with me. Well, I don't know. Josh would be like, I got to ask my wife.
Keeps me safe.
Yeah. Well, it was my point in reading that was to show I was qualifying what Steve said when he said he would have believed it if the Unabomber had wrote The Education of Little Tree. I was qualifying that statement. But the point that the thing that I also saw was that a lot of times being crazy can come with some reasonable ideas. Can come, it can come cloaked in something that seems insightful. Seems like, well, yeah, and obviously the Unabomber was a bad dude, clearly, but there's a whole lot of that manifesto that's really interesting. But yeah, well, any closing thoughts? What was the most shocking part of the thing, or your favorite part, or something that really stood out to you?
My favorite part was the church story, and that guy about him fighting for everything. I think that was in the first one.
Coon Jack.
And Coon Jack, I got the difference right here under my shirt.
Yeah, he showed him a pistol. Yeah.
Favorite part.
Wasn't that good? That's good writing. I mean, surely he just made that up. Like, I don't think that happened.
It kind of reminded me a little bit of Jerry Clower. What's his name?
Jerry Clower?
Yeah, Jerry Clower. That story about the guy. Do you remember when you did the podcast on him? And the story about it actually sounds a lot like stuff that does happen in small churches.
Yeah.
I mean, like it really does. When I read it, I thought, man, he saw that happen.
You're talking about the chandelier story.
Yeah, the chandelier story. It reminded me of Jerry Clower's chandelier story.
Yeah.
The circumstances around his death were pretty fascinating.
Yeah, and we didn't get into it.
Boy, that was a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt so. You can read the book Unmasking the Klansman by Dan T. Carter, and I did that interview before the book came out.
Wow.
Oh, really?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the detail and I had to respect Dan, and I understood he laid out everything. He hid nothing, and he wrote this book, and he's the world's expert on Asa Carter. And so when he didn't want to tell me how he died, I respected that, and I didn't go look it up. So we don't really know how he died.
So can you tell us here? We'll keep it a secret.
I still don't know.
Oh.
You gotta read the book. When did the book come out?
The book came out in April. Like, it's barely out.
Okay. So
Yeah.
we can all go look. I think we should respect. I think we should
Yeah.
respect him.
Yeah.
I'll go. I'm super curious. especially because he kept calling it biblical,
Yeah.
which
And
is like,
he referenced Cain and Abel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what does that mean? That's interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like maybe he had a worse brother that killed him.
Maybe.
Wow.
I'm concerned about this family.
Yeah. Yep. Well, we'll be moving on to greener pastures on Bear Grease after this one. The next episode's going to be really good. I can't tell you what it's about, but
I
I'm
can.
excited.
I'll call
can
Dan
too.
Carter and ask him.
This
DM
Country
me.
Life?
DM me. I'll tell you what it is.
Well, thank all you guys for coming. Much appreciated.
See y'all in
Malachi,
August.
good to see you.
See y'all in August.
Ben, yeah.
26.
30-32.
Yeah.
Hey, Josh, I tell you, you said something about my beard.
Yeah.
I tell you what my grandpa said about it. The first beard I grew.
Uh-uh.
He said, that looks ridiculous. I said, why? He said, I would not cultivate on my face what grows wild on my behind.
Oh my gosh.
I broke out my passport from 1994 and was showing these guys my little pencil mustache that I was really proud of back then, because that's all I could grow was like 17 hairs on each side.
Like a hen turkey with a beard.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase.
Outdoor adventure won't wait for engine problems. Things like hard starts, rough performance, and lost fuel economy are often caused by fuel gum and varnish buildup. Seafoam can help your engine run better and last longer. Simply pour a can in your gas tank. Hunters and anglers rely on Seafoam to keep their engines running the way it should the entire season. Pick up a can of Seafoam today at your local auto parts store or visit seafoamworks.com to learn more.